Beautiful buildings are not secured by the beauty of the building. It's secured by the foundation, which is one of the most important parts of any building. That is the foundation. And the second most important aspect of that building are the load bearing walls. Your mid level leaders are your load bearing walls in your organizations. And when load bearing walls start to crack, they actually destabilize the entire building. So you have seen the cracks and you have done what you think you need to do to correct the problem. So you have seen the cracks, but what have you done? What have you done to correct the problem? Have you just applied joint compound over the cracks or over the surface as a quick fix? Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to another episode of Finding Freedom Through Confidence, where we always say confidence isn't something you pick up from a supermarket shelf. It is an ever growing muscle. This is the space where leaders, visionaries, and high achievers come to be seen, to be heard, and to be reignited. If we haven't met as yet, I am Tanique Easy, speaker, corporate trainer, facilitator, empowerment, and life coach. And I help organizations unlock the power of their new frontline and mid level leaders and equip them with the mindset coupled with a vision and performance strategies to lead with power through my proprietary MVP framework. This session this week is a continuation of our episode from last week in the series The Leadership Unlocked. And we started to discuss why mid-level leaders crack and how to reinforce them. And so we're continuing that discussion this week. Again, welcome. Thank you for joining me live on LinkedIn as well as streaming live on YouTube. I know there are persons here on LinkedIn and there are persons watching us on YouTube. Let's talk about the why mid-level leaders, why mid-level managers crack, and how do we reinforce them? How do we fix that? How do we not just put a surface level joint compound over the cracks to mask the crack, but how do we fill out those cracks properly so that our mid-level leaders can be reinforced? Well, the first crack that we want to talk about is the dysfunctional cycle of silence. The cracks that make leaders, or the cracks that make leaders crumble. So again, you have applied the joint compound, but that was a short fix. It didn't solve the real problem. And so the cracks are showing up again. And what are the cracks that we are witnessing? You're witnessing the silence, the dysfunctional cycle of silence, leadership abandonment and confusion, and misalignment. You have met with your leadership team. That's what you have done. And you have crafted the vision for the year. But that vision is not being translated to the core team. Recently, just a few days ago, as a matter of fact, I had a discussion with a human resource practitioner. And the main crack that was identified in the leadership in her organization. And again, the leadership that bore or bears the load was this the dysfunctional cycle of silence. And as a senior executive, you may be experiencing this as well. This is something that you may be experiencing in your organization. And if you are, don't be afraid to chime in the chat, in the comments. Let us know how you are seeing these cracks showing up in your leadership structure. So here's the scenario. Her company's senior managers and executives met, which included the CEO, and they drafted the vision for the year. And after the meeting was over, the expectations of the senior executives were that the senior managers and the mid-level managers would take back this vision to their direct reports, and so that they can bring this vision to life. But that was not what happened. That was not what happened at all. What happened was the dysfunctional cycle of silence started again. The managers left the boardroom and they actually left the vision right there at that table. And I'm not talking about the physical paper. I'm talking about they did not own the vision. They left it right there. And so you have an expectation that your mid-level managers will be sharing the vision. You have an expectation that your senior managers will be sharing the vision and seeing to it that it is implemented, because you have come together and you have crafted this vision. But here's what was revealed in that discussion is that the mid-level managers were not aware of this expectation. How many times, or how many of you have done this exercise, you have crafted, you have had the meetings, you have gone on the retreats, the leadership retreats, and you have crafted the vision, but the vision was left same place at that retreat. That vision was left same place in that boardroom. The expectations were not there, or they were not communicated. Grand Rising, and welcome to you, Dr. Leslie. Thank you so much for joining us this week again. And so there's an implementation failure. So you have the dysfunctional cycle of silence where, yes, you craft the vision, it is left right there. They fail to communicate effectively the expectations for that implementation. The mid-level managers, they leave that space, that boardroom, that retreat, but they don't cascade down that vision. They don't cascade the vision downwards because, again, they have not owned that vision as their own. They have not tied that vision to themselves as an identity. And so the implementation keeps failing, and you're wondering why my leaders are cracking. You're wondering what is happening. Why are my leaders cracking? And so the cycle, the dysfunctional cycle of silence continues because the managers, they aren't often aware that they are expected to translate this vision into action. Because yes, it's crafted, but there is a miscommunication, which leads me right into the second crack. Which leads me right into our second crack. The one that you can't see in the annual reports or the dashboards. It's the crack of leadership abandonment and confusion or culture confusion at the mid-level. And so this is what might be happening in, or you might be experiencing in your organization. You might be experiencing this right away, right now. And if you are, again, or if you're experiencing something similar, it might not be the exact thing, but you might be experiencing something similar. Share it in the chat with us. Let us have that conversation in the comments and share ideas because other persons are going through the same thing. And so they are crushing. So here's what is happening in your organization, or it might be happening with your leaders. It's that they are crushing the annual goals. So you promote these doers into leadership. You see these capable doers. They're capable, they get the work done. And so you have promoted them into leadership because, again, they are crushing the annual goals year after year. They get exceed expectation on their performance reviews. And so they are expected to lead. You put them into this leadership position and they're expected to lead and to do so well, however, they weren't being led well themselves. And so from the discussion from, with that HR practitioner that I had earlier this week, is that senior executives never align vision with identity. So they promote, but they don't align or allow these doers to align the vision with their identity. Who am I? So what happens is mid-level managers they're given people to lead, but they're not given the mindset skills how to. Because they are doers, they have been doers, they know how to do, they know how to put their heads down and do their individual work. But now that they have been promoted, they were not prepared. They're not prepared. They're not prepared mentally. Their mindset is still that of being a doer, being the single doer that I contribute just this to. But no, I am in out of, yes, I like that, Leslie. Out of confusion comes order. We take little actions when confused. That is so true. And so that is it. They are promoted, but they're not prepared. And here's another way that this shows up, that I've ascertained that how this shows up is that when senior executives, what they do is that they tend to, or they pretend to listen. They pretend only to listen to mid-level or middle managers because they assume that, these mid-level managers will resist change. And the mid-level managers, in turn, what they do, they learn that they won't be listened to. And so they take on the role of the compliant child instead of the strategic leader. And so they see the vision. They see the vision because they were there. They helped to craft it. But that vision is not their own. They don't see it as their own. They don't take it as their own. They don't own it. And so there's not an alignment with identity. And so the cracks begin to show and they feel abandoned. And the disconnection is there and the doubt is there. And what they do is that they start to bundle up all of this confusion and doubt and disconnection, and they bundle it up and they put it in their pockets. And now they manage from a place of telling, but not from a place of true strategic leadership. And yes, Dr. Leslie, perhaps they need a coach. It's not perhaps, they need a coach. They need a coach, Dr. Leslie. And so this ends why we do strategy sessions like these. I know that you talk about, especially you talk about the the 7 levels of fears, so those fears that keep us stuck, and it begins in the mind. And leaders are in that category as well, because they fear criticism. And so what happens is that when that happens, they hold on to control. And Dr. Marcia and I, we had that session a few weeks ago where we talk about the insecurity of leadership, the insecurity in leadership, where they lead from a place of control instead from a place of true leadership, where understanding is there, where alignment is there. And that's what happens when that confusion is there. And so they bundle up all of this. And now, instead of being that strategic leader, they are just managing from a place of telling, not strategic leading, where we are leading with identity. We are leading from a place where we know that this vision is ours. It is the organization, but we have a part to play in this vision. My vision, my personal vision in this capacity as a leader is in alignment with what is happening within the organization. I want to pause and I want to welcome some other folks who have joined us. Welcome, 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 Leslie. Welcome, Leslie. Welcome, Lisa. It's good to see all of you. It's amazing when we have our beautiful people here joining us, and we know we have again some joining us over there on YouTube. But thank you for joining us as we are talking about this morning why mid-level leaders are cracking and how to reinforce them. And we talk about the first crack of the dysfunctional cycle of silence, where mid-level managers are expected to lead, but they have not been given the proper mindset, the proper mindset tools to lead. And they see the vision, but they don't own the vision. And so it's not implemented. And so now we move. Good morning, Dr. Marcia. Awesome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. And so we are going to be moving into the third crack that I have come across. So the third crack that I have come across, as again was this conversation with this HR practitioner just earlier this week, is that leadership misalignment. You have leadership misalignment, where leadership is just surface level. And so there are a lot of leaders, a lot of mid-level leaders, a lot of doers, because that's where it starts from. It starts from you being the doer. You are very good doer. You know how to put your head down as an individual and work to meet your personal targets. And so you look good on paper. You look good that way. And you look right for the job. And when you're in that interview, you say the right leadership cliche things. But the truth is that they haven't gone through the mindset process that aligns who they are with how to lead. And so the pressure begins when they get into the position of mid-level leader, frontline leaders. The pressure begins to mount, and so the crack starts to show, and over time it becomes wider because there is a misalignment, because it's just surface level, because they look good on the paper, they look good, they look right for the job, but that's just surface level leadership. And then it leads into the pressure. It's like you're in this pressure cooker and you see the steam coming out, but you see the crack, you see the wall. So because here's the thing, if you have two walls, you're putting up a wall, right? You're putting up this wall, and if the walls are not in alignment, if they're not lined up properly, and the mason goes ahead and does his thing, put up all the cement and everything. After a while, when the trusses are on the roof and the roof is on everything, you have your beams that are up there and the trusses have been flown and the roof is on. After a while, the crack is going to happen because there wasn't proper alignment. And so misalignment happens when two things are not lined up properly. And eventually what happens is that the pressure causes a fracture. And I had a moment like this recently. I sat in front of my door. So in my space, I have a door and I have some affirmations written out and I tape them on my door. So when I wake up, I can look at those affirmations. And so I sat in my space where I have my little quiet time. And as I was getting ready to recite an affirmation that I have posted there, which says, I am constantly developing a champion mindset daily to create my best life ever, I got checked. I got checked by the Holy Spirit right there. Like the Spirit checked me and said out loud, it said to me in such an audible voice within myself, within me, not, a booming voice, but within me. I got that conviction within me that this is not an affirmation. This is a principle. This is a life principle. And you're not living it. You are just repeating it. And can I tell you that for me, that hit deep. That hit me deep, so much so that I have not been able to move from that one affirmation over the last couple of weeks because I realized that I was performing a ritual without being in alignment with its reality. And so many leaders perform a ritual, perform a checkbox. When you get into the aspect of mid-level and frontline leaders, it is a checkbox. It becomes a checkbox instead of being in alignment with the vision, being in alignment with the role as a leader, as a true leader. Because I was speaking a truth that I wasn't yet ready to live. I was uttering these words. It was a ritual. And so I was uttering these words. And this was a truth that I was not yet ready to live. I had not chosen to live it. And when I got checked, I had to stop. I had to reflect. And that's where self-honesty as a leader comes in. So here's the connection to leadership. Misalignment isn't always about a lack of skills, because you may be skilled, you may have the technical skills, you may have those hard skills. Sometimes it is a lack of self-honesty, not being honest with self. And leadership, true leadership, starts with being in alignment with your core values. And so when you're promoted into mid-level leadership, here's a checkpoint. Here is a checkpoint for you. You need to check if your personal level of alignment is with the mission of the organization. Check your personal level of alignment as to that of the organization. And so you have been promoted. You have been promoted to the mid-level leadership. But the real question is, what are your intentions as you step into this new role? Because it's purpose over performance. As you step into this new role as a mid-level, as a new frontline and mid-level leader, what are your intentions? Do you understand how you fit into the vision of the organization? And it goes back to the alignment. It goes back to owning the vision, not just leaving the vision because you've gone to, you have spent the weekend with the team at the most expensive all-inclusive hotel and you've had a wonderful time and you've crafted the vision with the team. But did you take that vision? Did you own that vision? Or did you leave it same place at that hotel in that boardroom? Or if you hadn't gone to the hotel and you are doing it at your office, did you leave it in that boardroom? And I'm not talking about the physical paper. I'm talking about the vision. Did you own that vision? So do you understand how you fit into the vision of your organization and how your leadership improves its execution? How does it improve its execution? Do you see this role as a new identity? Do you see you being promoted as a new identity or just a bigger title with a bigger salary? Because if you haven't aligned your mindset with performance, your language becomes performance only, not purpose. And so we want to align our mindset with performance so that it ties into the purpose of why we do what we do. Because when you do align your mindset and performance, your language becomes more than just delivery. It actually becomes the direction for your team. It actually becomes the direction in which you go. And that's when leadership starts to move with trust and clarity and conviction. So, how do we reinforce the cracks? How do we reinforce the cracks of dysfunctional cycle of silence, leadership abandonment, and misalignment? How do we reinforce these cracks? We do that through mindset focused on clear communication. So, mindset, focus, flexibility. Mindset, focus, flexibility. Clear communication starts in the mind, and science backs this up. Cognitive behavioral therapy researchers backs this up by saying that what you believe influences how you behave. So as a leader, as a mid-level leader, what do you believe? As a new frontline leader, what do you believe? Because what you believe, it will influence how you behave in your leadership capacity. So if you believe that disagreement is disrespect, again, we spoke about control. Dr. Marcy and I did a session. If you missed it, you can go back and watch that segment where we talk about the insecurity of leadership, how leaders, especially new frontline and mid-level leaders, lead from a place of control. And so if you believe that disagreement is disrespect, then what you're going to do is that you're going to shut down people and you're not going to listen. You're not going to actively listen to them because you're going to shut them down. You're going to tell them you're just going to not listen. Just like how earlier I spoke about senior executives pretending to listen to their senior managers or their mid-level managers, and their mid-level managers recognize that, oh, so my voice is not being heard. And so if my voice is not being heard, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to act like the compliant child instead of being a strategic leader. So you shut down people. And so if you also believe that clarity is kindness, you're going to invite boldness and truth. And that's where you're going to communicate from a place of empowerment, not from a place of a victim mindset. You're going to start communicating non-judgmentally. And this is a learned ability. This is something that we all can learn, because we all have a judgmental tendency. We all have the tendency to judge people. But when we learn this ability to be non-judgmental in our communication, we learn to communicate from a place of empowerment, not from a place of a victim mindset. And as leaders, that's how you can get to apply this effectively. So whether you are a mid-level leader, you're a senior executive, you're a senior manager, these are the ways in which you can reinforce the cracks. I want to pause to read what Leslie said. She says that it occurs to me that as we are leaders in many different areas of our lives, and that what you are teaching actually works for all those who are ready to hear it. That is so true, Dr. Leslie. That is so true, because we are not only leaders in the boardroom, we lead in different aspects of our lives. And that is why I spoke about self-leadership and show the alignment when I spoke about how I got checked, because I was repeating an affirmation, but I was not yet ready to live up to that truth. And when I was ready to start living up to that truth, after I got checked, I started to do what that affirmation said. I started to live that affirmation instead of just saying it. And so that's where it works. So we actually teach. So it works for all who are ready to hear it, whether you are a senior leader, you are a mid-level leader, you are a new frontline leader, or you are a coach leading yourself only at this point, because at some point in time, as a coach, you're going to have a team of persons that you're going to lead, whether they are remote or they are working closely beside you. And so the fourth way that we can actually reinforce these cracks, to apply these effectively, the third way is to develop the ability to understand people's response. One of the things that again came out in the conversation with this HR practitioner is that her team, especially her senior managers and their mid-level managers, they avoid having hard conversations. Again, going back to the dysfunction cycle of silence, they avoid having hard conversations. But when we learn to understand the response of people, when we learn that, when we develop that ability, again, these are skills that we develop, mindset skills that we develop. We start to initiate these hard conversations with purpose, and we start having them with purpose. We don't avoid them, but we start having them, we start initiating them, because we know that it is only going to help not just yourself, not just myself, but it's going to help the team to become better. We're going to be able now to align, going back to alignment, aligning our departmental vision with that of the organization, being intentional. And then the fourth way to effectively apply this is to commit to ongoing professional development. Because one of the things when we talk about professional development, it's not just going to the courses to check the box again. Guilty of that when I was in corporate. You go and you check the box because you know it's going to count towards your end of year performance review. But when you commit to something, you are tuning in before you speak out. So you're tuning into self. You are examining mindset. You're tuning into self before you actually learn to speak out. And so if your team is delivering poor results, I want you to look at their dialogue. Look at look at the dialogue that they're having. If your people are disengaged, look at what is being said. And this is still the HR, the learning and development, and the operations directors. Because the real culture killer isn't often conflict, it's actually avoidance. Avoidance where they are avoiding the hard conversations, they are avoiding the accountability. And so if your managers can't navigate hard conversations with confidence, clarity, and accountability, your culture will suffer quietly. Absolutely, Leslie. Our judgment comes from our own fear of criticism. Nobody likes to be criticized, but what it's something that we need to learn how to share effective feedback. And believe it or not, once you start doing something, somebody's going to criticize you. So as somebody would say, develop a tough skin, develop thick skin. But it takes time as you grow into leadership. And so leaders, oftentimes, what is happening is these new frontline and mid-level leaders, they come into leadership because they weren't taught the fundamentals of leadership. They come in with a preconceived notion of control. And again, it goes back to if I believe that disagreement is respect, I'm going to shut you down. That is my control mechanism. And that's where most, again, from the conversations that I've had, that's where that happens in terms of mid-level leadership. So one of the things that I've thought of is that your leadership can't outgrow your mindset. And your mindset will always show up in how you lead. And so, question for all senior leaders and executives. In what ways can you support and hold accountable your frontline and mid-level leaders? And the second reflective question that I want you to reflect on is reflect on a time when a leader in your life demonstrated dysfunctional cycle of silence and leadership abandonment. How did their example impact your own leadership journey? So if you are an HR, learning and development, or operations leader, and you're ready to repair and strengthen your cracking leadership walls, I want you to go ahead and to DM me the word speak. And let's talk about bringing our leadership growth equation tour or our full MVP system into your organization. Because our tour starts in August and we have only 5 spots. for that leadership growth equation tour, where we'll get into the mindset aspect of leadership. This isn't just another motivational talk. This is a leadership level up. This is leadership next level from the perspective of mindset. This is not tactics, because here's what I know and what I also note, that strategies and tactics can change, but a growth mindset is a sustainable life skill. That's what I know and note. And so I want to thank you for joining me this week on another episode of Finding Freedom Through Confidence in the series Leadership Unlocked. Next week, we will be coming back with something where we'll be taking it even deeper. Have a great rest of the day. Bye for now.